Hey everyone, welcome to the very first Clash of Clans Q&A video. I'm Darian, Community Manager on Clash of Clans.
And I'm Powerbang. You guys might know me from my Clash of Clans YouTube channel.
We're going to be answering questions from you guys today that we fielded on our forums. So we're going to be going through those one by one, hopefully giving you guys the answers you've been looking for in Clash of Clans.
That's right. We're going to absolutely grill them.
So why don't we get started on the very first one?
Sounds good. Our first question comes from Mithaminator. How does Supercell define balance for offense and defense? And are they happy with the current balance?
So that's an interesting one. I talked to the game lead and we had a pretty in-depth conversation about this. And one of the things that we kind of agreed on as a message that we wanted to convey is that we wanted players to have something aspirational to strive towards. Especially when it comes to end game level gameplay. Like we wanted 3 stars at a Town Hall 11, especially a max Town Hall 11. We wanted it to be something special that it's not going to happen every single time someone makes an attack.
Of course not.
So we want it to be something worth striving for. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So to look at like the game in its current state, like right now, Town Hall 9 starts to feel like the first time serious attacks are, in the game. Is there a certain percentage that you guys are looking for as the number of 3 stars that happen at a particular Town Hall level? Is there a certain number that you guys are shooting for to feel good?
It's not so much numbers driven, it's more kind of a gut feeling feel. Like what do we feel is difficult enough or I guess rewarding enough where players want to keep improving new gameplay, coming up with new metas, coming up with new strategies. We want to see that constant invention of new strategy. I mean, if you look at let's say the CWL 2 finals. We saw, I think it was Itzu who came out with the dragon balloon tactic that was kind of a new strategy.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of stuff we want to see players constantly striving for, finding new ways to overcome that challenge.
It's a great example. So to follow up on that, like Town Hall 10 right now, I'm a high level player in Clash of Clans myself. I've played the game for quite some time. Town Hall 10 specifically feels like balance-wise, it's in a great spot. Better than it really has been ever. However, even for the top tier players, 30% of their attacks are resulting in 3 stars. That feels kind of low. Is that something that you guys are looking to tweak specific to like higher level gameplay, Town Hall 10 and Town Hall 11?
Balance is something that's actually constantly ongoing. So if we see that players aren't having enough success, that's why you see a lot of, hit points have been buffed or attack has been nerfed or, we add a new level of defenses. That's why that is constantly happening, is because we want to make sure that gameplay is remaining dynamic enough where players are constantly evolving their strategies. On top of that, if we see that there are too many successes, it's becoming too easy, we want to kind of reel that back. And I guess we want to create incentive for players to constantly improve.
If you guys notice a mechanic that may be missing, like for example, at Town Hall 9, 10, or 11, if any of those town halls felt like something was too hard, is there ever any consideration to perhaps putting additional troops into the game? It's been quite some time since we've seen something new on the traditional base. It
has been, and even though for the most part, for the last few months, we've been focusing on the Builder Hall, we have new Town Hall content being planned for the future. As far as stuff being introduced to the previous Town Halls, I believe it was an additional collector.
Yeah, we did have an additional collector added at Town Hall 9 here.
Right, which I think was a much needed boost to keep players moving forward in the economy and really upgrading their units much faster.
Absolutely. You said something kind of key there. I'm maybe interested to ask you something on that later.
What was that?
About the new Town Hall content coming.
We're always working on new stuff.
Is there anything you can share?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right. Easter eggs for what's to come then. Our next question comes from BobotheGoat. When considering the matchmaker in Clan Wars, what research or study is done to evaluate the effectiveness of the matchmaking algorithm by the development team? This would include past matchmaking and future matchmaking. What characteristics does the dev team find important when considering Clan War Matchmaking?
So a couple of weeks ago, we added the updated algorithm to the matchmaking system. And one of the things that we've been doing is studying the data on what's been happening. So we've seen some market improvement on how the matchmaking works, but we've also seen a lot of mismatches, especially in the top rosters of Clan Wars. So this is stuff that we're constantly monitoring. We are going to be making some additional changes to it in the upcoming near future. I believe in one of our either next or after that content patches that we're going to be making additional changes to the matchmaking algorithm.
Okay.
So it's something that we're constantly monitoring all the time. And the ultimate goal is that we wanted to make sure that Clan War rosters are matched as evenly as possible, where there isn't an intentional advantage or disadvantage in that war. So against, so-called engineered clans.
That makes sense. So you referenced the recent update that went out.
Yep.
A lot of I think the viewers, the players, the community itself kind of viewed that due to previous announcements or like, hey, we're working on this, which we appreciate the communication. A lot of people viewed that as this is the answer, and that's not necessarily the case. You guys did speak to the fact that, this is something that we can now tweak over time. Is that still the case?
Yes, it was not going to be a silver bullet that fixed everything. It was going to be a very evolutionary process where we made these changes, monitored what happened. We're not going to be doing radical overhauls of the system, and we want to make that clear that this is going to be something that we do iteratively, that we, we look at the data, see what's going on, make adjustments, monitor the data, and we have the ability to monitor these results. We can even monitor them very, very closely now. We wanted to see how the matchups go, and we also look at the feedback from the forums, and that's something that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, is just really reading feedback from the forums, looking at players' posts that showed clan rosters, and not just how many Town Hall 11s there were versus Town Hall this. We want to see what those bases were consisted of, and we've been providing them to the development team and showing them like, here's where these mismatches are happening, and that information is incredibly important to the development team. So it is something that is being conveyed to them. They are monitoring it, and we are making iterative adjustments as we go.
Got it. Well, that's a solid answer. For those of you at home, no radical changes in the matchmaking algorithm.
Right.
However, when can we expect more tweaks? Are these something that you guys are able to do outside of hot fixes or patches or anything like that? How often are you looking at the data and making changes?
We're actually looking at it every single day.
Okay.
Our server engineers are looking at it. This is a constant conversation that we're having pretty much on a daily basis on what needs to be done. We're looking at adding or subtracting weights from specific units. We're not ready to say which ones just yet. And we usually don't discuss numbers because we don't want to provide that kind of information to those who want to try to game the system to gain an unfair advantage. We want to make sure that players are playing the game as fairly as possible. And then that's not to say engineering is not necessarily cheating, but it is trying to take advantage of the system, trying to take advantage of a rule set within that system. And we're trying to make sure that if someone's trying to game the system, we want to make sure that we eliminate as many of those loopholes as possible to make sure players are being paired as fairly as possible.
Absolutely. I think that's a very fair point. That's a hotly debated topic.
Right.
A lot of people spend a lot of time building their bases in that particular manner. And while it's not outside of the rules or terms of service or anything like that, a lot of players that have built their base more traditionally by building their defenses and maxing those out, they want to play against clans that are like-minded.
Right.
And I think that trying to make these tweaks in order to give more fair matchups, whether it's an engineered clan or a traditional clan, I think that's a move in the right direction. Numbers don't necessarily have to be disclosed. At the end of the day, I think the players just want to see results in better matchups.
And one of the things that, we want to make sure that players are using the rules to be as competitive as possible, but we want to make sure that those rules provide as fair of a matchup as possible as well. So there's nothing wrong with looking at the system, how can I build my base as competitively as possible, but we want to make sure that those matchups are being fairly paired. And like I said, we've been seeing mismatches at those top rosters.
We have to.
Yes. So, these are the things that we're trying to address in the future.
Okay.
So, as far as how often we'll be doing updates, it depends on what needs to be done, but we're probably going to be doing them pretty frequently.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear that you have the ability to do them regularly. Yes. I think with any game, small tweaks to balance, whether it's matchmaking algorithms or characters in general, I think small is good because you don't want the pendulum to go from one side all the way to the other and have like matchmaking's taking an hour to match Clan Wars. Because I have heard that there are clans that, they've been searching for 128 hours and, you could have that problem as well. So something to
so,
clear.
And then that's another thing we need to balance. If we make the algorithm too strong, that's going to drastically affect how long it takes for a clan to search for a match in the Clan War system. So that's another thing that we have to take into consideration is, how strong do we make this algorithm where it starts affecting search times versus how weak do we want it where people can get searched as possible, and how many mismatches are, I don't want to say, quote, acceptable, but if a clan war, let's say if a clan can't match against an exact match, there's going to be some give up and down on the matchup in order to just kind of speed up the process on how long it takes for someone to match up against them.
Absolutely. It makes complete sense. The challenge that you guys have is monumental. There are millions of players and probably hundreds of thousands of clans trying to match up. And depending on what time of day, you could have some very extreme matchups. So at some point in time, the constraints have to loosen in order to actually make a matchup for a clan in an acceptable period of time. So,
right. I mean, my own clan women, the quickest I've seen it matched up is like 5 minutes, and the longest I've seen it go is almost overnight.
Wow.
So, but we have a pretty diverse clan in our group.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that someone with a pretty competitive roster can probably take a long time.
It depends. We have the benefit due to structured leagues and schedules of a lot of us are declaring at the exact same time.
Right.
So there are more of similarly rostered teams in the matchmaking pool at a given period of time. So there's that working for us. But when the middle of the week comes around and our schedules have diversified a little bit, we're definitely seeing, not necessarily longer across the board, but there is the ability to take a little bit longer to match up.
And then these are conversations that, again, the development team has to take into consideration when we determine the strength of that algorithm, and the harder if we make that algorithm stronger, it's going to affect search times, because no matter how strong we make the algorithm, there's never going to be a 100% perfect match, because everybody designs their base differently. Not everybody's upgraded this at the same time at the same level. Matching 1-to-1 on each base level, that's just not possible.
It's complex, to say the least.
So it's a very complex process on how to do this matchmaking. It's not as simple of, why don't we just wait the town hall, or why don't we just do this? There's so much more involved in that.
I agree. So I can appreciate the complexity of the problem. I think we've probably beat this horse dead. I do appreciate the detail, but suffice it to say, matchmaking is not where you want it to be.
Nope, it is not.
And it's a work in progress.
It is.
Okay. All right, this next one's from Ilm33. How precisely do you guys consider the new ideas and requests of the fans through the forum, and how are those opportunities evaluated to determine their relevance for an integration into the game?
That's an interesting one. Inspiration can pretty much come from it. I know that sounds very cliche to say that.
It does indeed. But that's okay, you're going to say it anyways.
I am. We get ideas from pretty much all over. We get ideas from the ideas suggestion forums on the community site. We get ideas from players that we talk to, and we get handwritten letters from players all over the world. But for the most part, what we do is, as a team, we basically just turn our chairs around and we talk about it. Someone will say, hey, I read this idea. What do you guys think of this? Is this something that's viable? Is this something that we can implement into the game? And then we sit down, we plan out what the logistics are for it.
That's interesting. I feel like I can personally attest to the fact that you guys do listen. I remember I wrote it like a dissertation, like many years ago now, probably 2 years ago, of all of the things that I felt was lacking in the game. And I remember writing all of these ideas down. I sent them in to the community managers, like, hey, look these over. And then I forgot about it. And cleaning out my desk, I stumbled across this old paper like 8 months later, and 5 of those ideas were in the game. And I'm not saying it was my doing or whatever, but I felt like, man, that's odd that all of those were incorporated. Do you have any experience with finding an idea somewhere out there in the community? Is there anything that you can give credit to that you saw somewhere that's now in the game that the team thought that was a great idea?
I don't know about giving credit to specifically.
Sure.
But a good example of where the development team and the community were in sync, where I believe the forum poster's name was Mastermind, where he posted, I don't know if it's he or she, posted this whole base builder idea, and went through this huge detail about how to build your base, and this whole feature of Clash of Clans where you can modify and change your base layout. And it was something that the development team was already working on, and it was a strange moment of synergistic convergence, where what the development team was working on, or at least wanted to do, was perfectly in line with the suggestions of the community. So we do see that good ideas do come from the community, and it does show us that when the development team is working on it, that these are things that the community would like to see. So we do see good ideas come from a variety of places. Some of the best ideas I've seen, we had a 10-year-old and 11-year-old kid from Germany handwrite us a letter.
No way.
Yeah, they hand wrote us a letter writing that they wanted to see this cool unit in Clash of Clans where it was this, but in this instance, it was a demonic character that when it got killed, it turned into bats. What does that sound like? What does that sound like?
Night Witch, maybe?
Yes.
Interesting.
And it was right when we were working on Builder Hall 6 too, when we got that letter. So it reassured us that, this is something that, at least someone out there wanted to see.
You got a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old in Germany that are pretty happy right now.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, you guys you're professionals. You know, or at least have a pretty good intuition about what people want to see.
Yes.
And I would imagine that due to your development cycles, you're probably already working on a lot of the suggestions that you get in the community. Is there anything that you see out there right now that you're just like, wow, this is awesome, we're going to work on this, and obviously it takes time through the development cycle. Is there anything in the pipeline right now that you've gotten from the community?
A lot of things we've gotten. One of the things we're looking at is fixing the clouds. We've seen a lot of suggestions on those, and a lot of them are things that we can implement, and a lot of things that we can't. But the problem is such a complex situation, and a lot of it has to do with just the nature of how the game is developed. For example, the reason why people are in the clouds is because so many people are online wanting to attack, and the system requires you to be offline in order to be attacked. So if there's more people online than there are offline, you end up with clouds.
Absolutely.
So one of the biggest problems is how do we fix that? And we've seen a ton of suggestions. And one of them is looking at, which we'll address, I believe, as a later question, is, will a head-to-head system work for Legendary League? And doing the builder base head-to-head was a good way for us to test if this mechanic would work. The builder base kind of gave us a lot of opportunity to try a lot of things that we felt weren't working in Clash of Clans, like a head-to-head system. And these are a lot of suggestions. I mean, a lot of the builder-based functionality was based on player suggestion. They wanted to see, a night mode village. They wanted to see head-to-head competition.
They wanted the gem mine, and dang it, you gave it to them.
Yeah. The gem mine was another one that's been a long time suggestion. So these are all features that we wanted to implement, but in order for us to add those, we didn't want to take away from the main town hall functionality to begin with. We wanted to give players, a different mode of gameplay, but without radically altering how the main town hall worked in the first place.
That was kind of how I perceived a lot of the builder-based content. It's almost like a playground of sorts where you can test new ideas without really risking, what you've built on the traditional base.
Right.
Kind of stemming off of that are there mechanics in the builder base? Right now we've seen a couple of gear up options on the main base. Are there anything that you've seen or learned on the builder base that you're planning on porting over at some point to the main base?
Kind of almost the opposite. We see a lot of events and features that we like on the town hall that we want to bring over to the builder base. For example, we've got how we have the special events in the town hall, like if we do a dragon and lightning spell event, or a bowler witch event, when player can, if you win with this many troops, you win gems. We're going to be doing some of that stuff for the builder base. But on top of that, we are doing some fun stuff for the builder base that we're pulling over from the town hall.
Interesting.
Not ready to reveal them quite yet, but we will be touching on them in the next few weeks.
Okay.
So we've got some updates for, like I said, even though we've been focusing on the builder base for the last couple months, we are working on town hall. But we've had some stuff for the builder base in development for a while now that we're getting ready to release. And a lot of it's exciting stuff that we're pulling from the town hall.
Very excited to hear more on that when you guys are ready to talk about it then.
You will.
All right. Our next question comes from Ken1374. What is one or more troop, spell, or building that had a great concept and would have fit well in the village, but just didn't work when you tried to implement it into the game?
So I actually had to talk to the game team about this because there was a cool idea that they had for a Goblin Zeppelin. And on paper, it sounded really cool. It had apparently 3 different facets to it, where each one had its own hit points, and so you had to kill all 3 of them to make it happen. Each one could attack separately, or attack different targets. So as it flew overhead, each facet of it would shoot at different targets. But apparently, while it sounded good on paper, they had a hard time technically making it happen, and they just couldn't get it balanced properly. They couldn't get the unit to function correctly. In the end, they ended up scrapping it.
That's an interesting answer. That seems like an absolute nightmare when it comes to like targeting. Sometimes the front goblin of the Zeppelin would probably be in range of a particular building, but the back ones weren't. And it's interesting. Did that particular unit target defenses, or did it have a favorite target?
I'm not sure what the details are because it got scrapped. I believe that it was almost implemented in the game. They were pretty far along with the development process of it. I don't know if it was a unit that eventually just tacked everything. It may have eventually became the Lava Hound, if I remember the rumor correctly.
Interesting.
I know a lot of the tech behind it eventually went into some kind of air unit. I'm not sure if it was a Lava Hound. They get pretty mum about it when you start getting a little more details about the Goblin Zeppelin. It was just kind of one of those, yeah, it didn't work.
What could have been?
Yeah, there's some wistful thinking.
Interesting. So, are there any new troops that you're working on right now? I have to ask. It would be wrong if I didn't.
Always.
Always?
Yeah, we're always looking at new ideas for new units. We're always looking at cool ideas, trying new things out. Whether they implement it or not is an entire story altogether. We still have the dropship and the super P.E.K.K.A. for Builder Base, and we're still working. We're looking at stuff for Town Hall as well, but we don't have anything quite ready to be revealed yet.
That makes sense. What's that process normally like if you're looking? I mean, obviously there's things that are always in the works, but we haven't seen a new troop in forever, it seems like, on Town Hall. What's the process typically like, and how do you determine if something is good enough to make the cut?
We look at what the needs are for the game. If we see, that some kind of range unit is needed, or a tank is needed, or a damage, or something is needed, we look at where the gaps are in the system, and we try to find a way to address them. That's how the bowler came along, because the bowler is a relatively new addition to the roster.
So typically when you make a new character, are you looking at a particular mechanic that you're trying to have it fill, and then kind of work backwards from that?
Kind of. We look at, what's a good mechanic that we can implement in the game? How do we implement it? What niche does it fill? And it is something that works with the current stage of the game.
Our next question comes from Kurzeng9. Given that the Clash team wants the game to keep going for many more years, what is the meaningful progression of the game from this point onwards? Is it just adding more town halls, or is the dev team looking to expand in different directions?
So the builder base was recently added. We added that in June. So it's a relatively new facet of the game. We do feel the game needs big changes every now, which is why they have a regular, history of adding new content or big updates on almost semi-annual basis.
Right.
So with the builder base being still relatively fresh, we're not ready for the quite next big update, but it is something that we are working on. But we do agree that the game does need a shake-up every now and then to keep things new, keep things fresh, not only to entice new players, but to keep experienced players coming back. We want to make sure that content is available to a large range of players. And what that means is with the builder base, it was something that, everybody from beginner level all the way to end game level players had access to. It was something that they could all, jump into and play. We would like to add content for end game players. We do believe that they do need some attention. There's a lot of stuff in the end game that does need addressing. For example, clouds, additional content, and not just adding new levels to walls or adding new levels to units. We do feel that content does need to keep being added, not only just to keep the game fresh, but to keep players constantly striving for that next goal.
That makes complete sense. I know that some of the feedback that I get on my YouTube channel is, what about us, right? Like everybody wants to be, it's self-serving always. They want something that's gonna make sense for them. And I know that's something that Supercell looks to do with their updates, is they want to serve as large a population as possible. And that's something that the builder base did, but now you're seeing folks want, updates to the main base. Of
course.
Is that something that we can expect to see soon?
Yeah. As we said earlier, we are adding content to the main base. Town Hall is something that we're focusing on, and not just seasonal items, not just regular events. So we do want to focus on balance. We do want to look at the clouds. We do want to look at Clan War Matchmaking and make additional adjustments to that. But not only that, but we want to give players constantly new stuff to strive for. There is no the start of the game, and then there's no finish to the game. We want to give players constantly something like, what's next, what's next, what's
Absolutely.
after that.
You can't have a finish line because then people stop playing, right? I beat the game.
Right.
You don't want to have that aspect to it. You want to continually bring people back. I feel like new content is definitely something that a lot of people are looking for, in addition to just added levels or
Right.
New walls or what have you. The seasonal items are very nice, but there are some times when seasonal items come out and it's like, man, wouldn't that be cool if it stuck around permanently so I could use it for more than 4 days?
Right, it's very ephemeral.
Right.
So at the same time, if we decide to do new town hall levels, we have to make sure that that's what's right for the game. So whether it's the next town hall or a new game mode or something completely different, that we're constantly looking for what that next big thing is. So this year it was the builder base. Whatever the next content update, well, you guys have to wait and see. But we do have something in mind.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. One follow-up question on the seasonal troops as well. Do you ever see those and think, man, wouldn't that be neat to add on a more permanent basis? I know there's been positive feedback for several of the characters, notably the Ice Wizard, when that kind of came around. That seemed like a really popular hit with the majority of the community, and while it was met with some feedback at first, like, oh no, you're just bringing Clash Royale stuff over to Clash of Clans, once people played it, they were like, man, that's really cool.
It was a great unit for funneling.
Absolutely. It was great for funneling. It had, ran up. And, I felt like the balance was there for that troop, which hasn't always been the case, either way underpowered or, possibly even overpowered, but more underpowered is typically the way those go. Has there been any talk to bringing some of those types of units back permanently?
Oh yeah, it's actually a conversation we have quite a bit. And it's funny, like every time we start talking about seasonal events, whether it's for Halloween or winter or summer or the Clashiversary, the conversation of do we want to bring these units permanently into the game? That's something that constantly comes up, and there is a discussion on that, whether we want there to be a sense of I guess special eventness, that this was something that was not necessarily a one-time only, but it was a limited time, and wanted players to remember when we had the Ice Wizard for this special event.
Right.
Whether those make it into the game or not, again, going back to the conversation we had about adding units to the game, we have to see, is there a need for it in the game? Is there a fit for it? I mean, do we see that that's the right decision for the game? Because we don't want to just constantly copy each other's games, just because one game does it. Do we want to add that unit to the game? It's got to make sense. And in the case of the Ice Wizard, there's a lot of us who look at the Ice Wizard like, God, we really wish we could have that in the game permanently. So it's a conversation that's constantly being had.
That's good to hear. Well, I got to say, bring back the Ice Wizard. I'm a fan.
I'm with you on that one too.
Right.
I would love to see the Ice Wizard in the game.
Ice Wizard coming soon.
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't say that. Our next question comes from Superfinch30. What are the perceived cons from a Supercell standpoint of having head-to-head for Legend League only?
Well, head-to-head for Legend League only sounds kind of ideal. In the immediate sense, it sounds like it would fix the cloud situation. One of the cons is, do you force Legend League players into head-to-head? What if they don't want to be in head-to-head? Do you make it optional? And how does that work? And on top of that, head-to-head doesn't exactly work with the main base. The economics don't line up correctly. The system itself would be incredibly complex to change. On top of that, you have players who have played for years building to where they are. If we were to implement a head-to-head system, would that immediately eradicate their entire record? Does everybody in Legend League have to start over?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about the challenges of implementing something like that, and I don't know how you guys would solve that particular question. I mean, head-to-head in theory sounds awesome. That was one of my favorite things about the builder base that was implemented, was the fact that I can show off that I'm the best, right? I can go up against an opponent in real time and prove that I can attack better than him. I liked that.
I do too. I love head-to-head. But just anecdotal side story, I guess, I have friends who don't like playing head-to-head. There's a bit of a social anxiety pressure that comes from playing like, oh my God, I have to constantly compare myself against the other person. What if I don't want to do that? What if I just, I enjoy just, building my base and attacking someone, knowing that I'm not being attacked in return. So if someone wanted to opt out of that, how do we implement a system that lets players opt out of it, or do we just force them in the Legends League, everybody into it? So
that's an interesting question. Do you think inherently that those who take the time to brave the clouds and push that far into Legends League, do you think that they have some sort of ingrained competitive spirit as is and would be okay with head-to-head?
I think you have to be competitive to get that far to begin with. But whether or not someone wants to play head-to-head is entirely, does it require you to be online all the time? How does that system work? Does it work if you're offline? Can players still attack you when you're offline? So, and what if there's an odd number of people offline? So
I think that's the biggest challenge there is there risk to being offline?
Right.
Can I have my base hurt or attacked, or am I vulnerable essentially
Right.
if I'm not online? There's other games that I played where it felt like you had to be on 24/7, and I can understand how that feels a little overwhelming. It can cause a little bit of anxiety, and it's also probably not like the casual gaming experience that you're typically going for. So definitely some challenges there, but if we could sum it up, head-to-head is something that is being looked into.
yes.
And no determination has been made yet on if
Right.
that's going to come.
But it is something that we have looked at, and that's why we did it in the builder base. We wanted to test it out, see how effective it was, and it is enjoyable. But in order to solve the clouds, we have to look at what is going to be best for the entire game, and not just for one subset of players. Because if we make that change, it's going to radically alter how the game functions. Because right now, like I said, the biggest challenge with the clouds is that more people have to be offline than online, and that's just the nature of the way the game was built.
Yeah, it's got to be difficult as a game developer to have a game where too many people are online. Just stop playing, guys. We need you offline so we can get our attacks done.
Well, and that's why some of the shield system was changed early on.
The personal break was implemented to
Yeah.
kind of increase the likelihood you're going to catch somebody offline.
Right.
You had people really, really, crafty about shield usage and maximizing the amount of time that they were protected, whether they were online or off.
Right, and so these are things that we have to look at. Is it something that we want to really drastically radically alter? And it may require that, just given how long players are waiting in the clouds.
It makes sense. I know for me, I consider myself an above average player, and I just recently made my first trip to Legends League, and I made it. Although it wasn't challenging from a skill perspective, I just never wanted to invest the time before to sit in the clouds, and that's something that, if that were solved, that particular issue, and I know that's a huge ask, I would love to see how far I could actually go against,
Right.
good basis.
Right, and I think with Legend players, they have that competitive streak to want to see how far they can go, and I think players should be rewarded by being able to play the game when they push that far.
Makes sense.
So removing or eliminating players from being able to play the game in the end we see it as detrimental to the game.
Awesome. So to kind of follow up on this, I had one question that kind of merges with this one and one we asked earlier. You're currently seeing right now in high-level gameplay, Town Hall 11 specifically, it's nearly impossible to fail on a base when you're attacking. We're not seeing a whole lot of 0 stars anymore. Almost everybody is able to pick up the percentage required to get to that 50%. Is there something that you're looking at internally to make it possible to fail again? Because I remember there was a period of time where it was, man, you just getting a star was okay, and getting 2 stars was really good. And now it feels like it's almost inevitable, and maybe going for that 3 star is even more likely than not.
No, it almost sounds opposite of not enough 3 stars, and this kind of goes back to the ongoing game balance. We recently upped the defenses on Town Hall 11s, and that was, we wanted to add that extra challenge to get there. So we wanted players, constantly improve their tactics, and that goes back to, we constantly monitor game balance. So, we don't look at the numbers of how many players get 1 stars or 2 stars. We just kind of go with, what do we feel is challenging? What do we feel is, something worth aspiring for? Like, is this something that, gives a sense of like, I want to get to that next level. I want to constantly improve my tactics, or is it just overwhelmingly daunting where like I feel like I'm never going to get there? If we feel like it's getting to that point, we may dial it back a bit.
Interesting. Like my feedback on the Legends League, now that I'm there, you look at the cloud system and really that right now, at least the level of Legends League that I'm at, is time is your only obstacle. It's very difficult to actually have somebody defend successfully. And I wonder if that's something that's ever going to be tweaked or brought, a little, more difficulty in hitting these, Town Hall 11 bases to the point where it is possible to fail an attack once you get to a base after you've made it through the clouds.
Well, I mean, that's what balance is for, and that's why we're always looking at, if we add new content, if we add new units, that's to either increase or decrease that difficulty.
Looking forward to see what changes are in the pipeline. Our final question comes from Frogged. What are the top priorities to improve or fix of the developer team right now? For example, Legends clouding, war matchmaking, players leaving, upgrading heroes usable in war, Town Hall 12, Builder Base 7, or Builder Base AI fixing.
So the main priority of the development team is to keep the game interesting. That's always going to be a top priority, is making sure that it's fun, challenging, and makes you want to constantly come back and keep playing. That's a very overarching point of view from the development team on what the main priority is.
Fairly vague.
Yeah.
Let's get into the specifics.
Okay.
All right.
Priorities right now, fixing matchmaking.
Okay.
So getting Clan War Matchmaking fixed is one of our top priorities. On top of that, fixing clouds is also a huge priority. And the cloud thing is an always ever-present priority. Now, we've had builder-based content in development for a while, as we mentioned earlier. So we have Builder Hall 7 coming out pretty soon.
Okay.
And I believe we have Builder Hall 8 already in the works. And that's stuff that's already known.
That's something that we've known and seen a little bit, in development for a long time now. So we know it's coming.
Right. So these are things that are, at least from a development perspective, they're higher priority because they're imminently due. Beyond that, we've got Town Hall content coming out. So
Town Hall what?
Town Hall content.
Okay. Okay.
You're not going to trick me with that one.
I tried.
I know.
I tried, guys.
I'm on to you.
All right.
But on top of that, we do have stuff in the works. So as far as from a content perspective, those are priorities. So there are different priorities in development. For example, addressing issues, addressing challenges, and addressing content. So that's why we have different disciplines in the game. In the game development team, we have artists, engineers. Each one of them is focusing on a different challenge. So, for example, from the matchmaking perspective, that's something an artist is not going to be focusing on that. That's something the server engineers be working on. That's something some game engineers be working on. From new content wise, making sure some new content looks cool. That's going to be something that the entire game team works on together, including the artist. So it entirely depends on how far along the development process we are.
That makes sense. I feel like that's a misconception that a lot of people have, is that if the Clash of Clans team is focusing on a particular issue, that it must be neglecting all of the other issues.
No.
That's not the case. You guys can multitask, and you also have hired multiple people that are, strong in different disciplines.
And it also depends on what the high priority, for example, if we find a high priority bug in the game, then we may shift several disciplines to addressing that bug. We've got a QA team that constantly sifts through these bugs. We also go through our bug report forums. We also get a lot of bugs reported to us from players in-game, and also from our QA team that tests as well. So, but if it's something that we need seasonal content, artists may shift temporarily to that because it's something that it's seasonal. It's temporary.
Makes sense.
But it doesn't take away from the development of new content as well. It's not like, the entire team completely shifts direction and then forgets about everything else. And one of the biggest fears that we were aware of was, when we released Builder Hall, that, a lot of players were afraid that we were going to be only focusing on Builder Hall content. And that's just simply not the case. We are going to be focusing on Town Hall content. And, whatever future content is beyond that.
It's pretty key to differentiate there. Like, even though that Builder Hall is like the updates that we've been seeing as of late, those are scheduled updates. Like, this is part of the plan. You guys are still working on Town Hall content, beyond that in the background.
Right.
Okay.
So, and also keep in mind that Builder Hall came out, 3 months ago?
Feels like it's been out forever already.
It's still relative, in terms of game development, it's relatively new content. So it does need some time to mature a little bit, which is why we have Builder Hall 7 and Builder Hall 8 still on the horizon. And we do have some additional content beyond just, or not want to say beyond, but on top of the new Builder Hall levels, we've got some new features that are coming out for, and these are things that have been in development for a while.
That's great.
So once those things are mature and ready to be revealed, we'll be sharing them on our forums and on social media. But again, that's not taking away from the Town Hall content development either.
That's awesome. One thing I'd like to kind of submit to the development team and you is I'd love to see some more ways to interact on the builder base and feel like a more social, engaged experience, being able to, participate with people. And, like the friendly challenge thing that was added to the main base, I'd love to see something similar on the builder base to be able to play with our friends more instead of a random person, on the internet, on the other end.
That's a good idea.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe working on something like that? Maybe.
So keep in mind that, when the town halls were, or when Clash of Clans were first introduced, that there were no clan wars. So, it's a game called Clash of Clans, but there were no clan wars. That was a feature that was added much later on. So given that the builder base is still relatively new, there's still room for it to grow and have more features added onto it. And we do want to add a much more social dynamic to the game. So it is something that we are looking at.
So that's going to wrap up today's developer Q&A. Wanted to thank Darian from the Clash of Clans community team for taking the time to talk to us. I know it answered a lot of the questions that I personally had about the direction of Clash of Clans, and hopefully it answered some of the questions for you guys at home as well.
And thank you guys for submitting the questions. The development team and the Clash of Clans team as a whole really enjoyed reading through the questions, formulating our answers, and really trying to put forward kind of some clarification on where Clash of Clans is going, where it's kind of come from, and some of the things that we have in mind for the future. So, as Powerbang said, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.